I've been saying this for a while now. I think events, and I do think specifically the last 2, 3 years coming out of COVID, they have changed a ton. And I think they will continue to push in this direction. But I'll give a bit of an outline of what I think. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, even up until about 2014, 15, I think this is what the old value of, say, an event or a third party conference in particular is. It's the convenience of congregation. It is bringing everybody together in an industry, in an association with people that had sort of mutual interests, right? There was convenience that there's a third party organizer. There's a person doing it for you. Okay. People would go value wise. They want to prospect. They want to network. They want to listen to keynotes. They want to learn. And of course, like everybody always says, they want to see what's new. I call a ton of bullshit on that, but essentially I do think that there is an element to that, particularly back in the day, particularly when we're talking old value. So I think that is what drove people to events. That is why they went. They typically met people that they were not able to meet. They met prospects they couldn't meet. They met partners they didn't know existed. And it really was the grip that events had on people. It is the reason why companies spent exhibitor dollars, sponsorship dollars, attendees spent dollars to go without really thinking why, because it was like a thing to do and there really was an alternative in that sense.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but I think most of that stuff is like the eternal value of events. Back then, there was also the idea that, as the event organizer, what the value you brought to market was the list of the people, right? It was the list of like everybody that has this job title. And as all of us who are obviously on LinkedIn these days, we know that we can now create a list of exactly that job title right now, right? I know, at least for me, man, I started realizing in early 2019, as I left my old job in 2018 and was trying to figure out, do I start a company? Do I go get a job? My response was to take like a 90-day purposeful pause and figure out where I want to be in 10 years. And what I wanted to do in those 90 days was like get as much information and reps talking about the stuff that I'm thinking about as I could. So I went to like 5 conferences in 90 days. And I remember that when I was making my decision-making criteria of where I wanted to be, it was like, who's the type of person that's going to be there and who are the keynotes? And I realized very quickly from the first conference to the second conference, my attendance of the actual keynotes and the stuff on stage went down dramatically. And then from the second one to the third one, my attendance from on that went down even more until by the third one, I was basically just like, I caught like maybe one talk and the rest of the time I was in the hallway. And that's when I started really realizing that the value of this stuff, the value that I took from that period of my life was the 1,000 iterations of talking to people that think like me and are business owners and blah, 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 of like what's working for them, what's not, where's the gap, how can I fill it, and where can I move forward, right? So like, I don't know. I thought that was like early 2019, but then
That's kind
COVID
of
really
the
accelerated everything.
that's kind of the unwritten magic of events, right? Like
Yeah.
people always talk about like the value of events and why they're so great. And it's difficult to express sometimes.
Yeah.
It is those interactions. It is those happy hours, those breakfasts, those off the cuff hallway conversations, the things that happen. I think looking at it now, describing a little bit of the change that's happened. Like
Yeah.
what is the change that has happened to me? The biggest change that has happened, and if people ignore this, like they're absolutely like just effing crazy. It is the sophistication and the development of the internet. Yes, we had the internet in 14, 13, 12, 11, but I'll just rattle off a couple tools here. LinkedIn, Facebook, Zoom Info, Seamless AI, Teams, Slack, Reddit, Zoom, Apollo AI. These things were not what they are now in 2014. They weren't even close. They weren't even close. So as I list off those things, what do those things change? They change prospecting for brands. They change research for buyers. They change communication and they change the ability to get together. That's what those things do. That directly affects in-person live events, whether we like to admit it or not. A lot of event people don't let, in face-to-face it's different. It is different, but you cannot ignore the fact of what the sophistication of the internet has done to pull away values that were held at an event. Like back in the day, people were excited to go to the event. They were going to meet new prospects. By the way, if you're in a niche or a decent sized industry and you meet somebody randomly out of the blue from a company that you've never heard of before, your account-based team is not doing their job. They should already be finding them. They should already be in your marketing. They should already be in your prospecting. You should already have eyeballs on them. You think they're just going to randomly walk up to your booth now? They're not, right? They're not. That's not the way it works. The second piece of this is all of these things have an enabled community. COVID enabled community, and community on the side of numerous parts. One is networking, two is research, and three is trust factor inside these communities, right? And I think Facebook, Reddit, Slack, all these channels are giving community a bigger chance. Zoom, right? Zoom happy hours during COVID. People are like, oh, wow, we can meaningfully connect to a degree virtually like we are right now. And I can get peer-to-peer interaction. I can have these questions answered. Last piece I thought about on this was, well, there's two and change, is keynotes in learning. All the keynotes that you go see, let me tell you something. I just reviewed 12 keynote speakers for a conference and looking at them, trying to help select and have my input on 2 of them. I literally, between YouTube, TED Talks, masterclass, podcasts, every video, every audio, anything clip I need on this person, I can watch and see. So keynotes are becoming less important because they can get it at home. They can watch the same keynote at home, essentially. So what these kind of then beg the question, I think, for the spenders of the group, which is typically the hosts, the sponsors, the exhibitors, is why are we spending all this money now when we're already spending money on subscriptions and prospecting and Slack and Zoom channels and everything that they're doing? And I think that is the fundamental change that has happened. Now, with that said, Pablo, it's like, I'm not saying that events have less value. That is not what I'm saying. I think their value is as strong as ever, but the value has changed without a doubt. And the old playbook, I think, will slowly die out. And for those still running it, I think you're behind the 8 ball.
Yep. Couldn't agree with you more, man. You were going down the path of kind of like that person to person and the prospect and the research on people. You know, to me, that is really that whole why the younger millennial Gen Zs are just like, events are too expensive, right? Like, because they're so used to doing that stuff.
You're like, oh, we spent $200,000 to be here?
Yeah.
And
correct.
They're confused naturally. It makes total sense.
Yeah, 100%. And then I thought you weren't going to hit it and I was going to get to sound smart, but like, how do I get better at my job? That stuff is already handled by YouTube. It's already handled by TikTok. It's already handled by podcasts. I'm a product of that myself.
Yes.
Right. So yeah, this idea of the hallway conference, what is the magic of, I think it's what you call peer-to-peer tacit knowledge exchange, right? Like this, what's working for you right now? What do you know that I don't know that isn't out there? How do I contextualize from like the YouTube video into like, okay, good idea. Is it for me? And how do I apply it myself by talking to somebody that's done it? That is truly the thing that really, really tough to put at scale on the internet. And man, the professional network, right? Like who's the next person that's going to hire me? Like if I'm trapped in my career, what's the next step I make? If I'm stuck trying to solve a problem, who do I call that I can really access when I'm not?
If I'm researching a software, a problem to solve, and I want to know what it's really like.
Yeah.
Who are they going to go to? It used to be 10, 15 years ago, not easy to just find somebody that's doing the same job for a similar company as you are that's already been there and done that. But now it's easier than ever. So you can just ask. You don't need a BS referral from a company, to give you their 3 happiest customers, one of which is probably their cousin, right? To tell you how great it is. You can just go figure it out for yourself. It's very easy.